All right, TikTok, hold on, because we're about to go to school on this one. Today it's unicorns. That's right, unicorns. Unicorns are not a myth. We teach our kids things that are opposite. We like to twist the word. We talked about this when I did the video on dragons. I know a lot of times in these new translations of the Bibles, we don't hear any mention or not much mention of the unicorn. It's not until you go back to the older versions. Do you know the rhino was an ancient animal that's actually being mentioned here? Let's talk more about that. Let's read Job 39, starting in verse 9 and go through 11. It says, will the unicorn be willing to serve thee or abide by the crib? Verse 10 says, canst thou bind the unicorn with his hand in the furrow, or will he harrow the valleys after thee? Then he says in verse 11, wilt thou trust him because his strength is great? Or wilt thou leave thy labor to him? Why is God giving so much airtime to a fictitious animal and he calls it great and strong? What's going on here? See, if you understand some older books, the 1828 Webster Dictionary actually is where we got our dictionaries from, the King James Bible. Do you know the Geneva Bible that was brought here by the Pilgrims also mentioned these animals called unicorns? You know the Greek LXX translation from Hebrew to Greek also extensively mentions unicorns? You know the Spanish German Luther Bible greatly and extensively mentions unicorns? Why is that? You know, the idea of removing the word unicorn is kind of a modern idea. We teach our kids that, you know, unicorns are fake and Greek gods are real in some cases, but really it's just a matter of understanding what they mean by unicorn, or what we're taught unicorn is. We teach our kids that unicorn looks a lot like that. The Webster says the animal with one horn is a rhinoceros. It's called a monoceros. The sea unicorn's like a fish or a whale. You know what it's called? It's called a narwhal. What a weird name. The horn grows out of its nose. It's not a fairy tale unicorn that we see our kids with that comes in the, you know, we get at Walmart. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, some of the newer versions, they call it, you know, the wild ox or goats or horses. They try to generalize and make it something it's not. You know, in 8400, Jerome wrote the Latin Vulgate, and for some reason he interchanges the word unicorn and rhinoceros. But what's fascinating is we actually see the rhinoceros in reference in other areas with a specific Hebrew name, but when it mentions the unicorn, it actually gives it its own name. Adam Clark's an ancient commentary, and he writes this word re'im, which is a rhino in Hebrew, right here. Why is it in Job 1:14 that the word oxen is used specifically and identified separate from unicorn? If they're the same word, why are there differences that are designated in Hebrew? And why does God put the unicorn grouped up with other animals that are listed, and he identifies them as real living creatures, but yet we've turned it into this like fictitious creature? Psalms 29:6 says that the unicorn skips like a calf. Check this video out. Sure seems a lot like the rhino skipping like a calf. You know, there's a scientific term, there's two different names for this animal. It's called the rhinoceros bicornis, and it's got two horns. Guess what the other one's called? The rhinoceros unicornis. What are the odds? There is an animal called an elasmotherium, which is an animal that's considered to be extinct now. It's an ancient animal. It could be, in theory, it could be that animal it's talking about. You know, some of the records say that the skull from that animal was 33 inches across. That's a huge head. You know, so when the Bible was translated in England, they wouldn't have these around, so they probably didn't have a reference to go by, so they didn't mention a whole lot about it. Like I told you guys, in Job 39:10, he references other animals alongside this animal just to let us know, in case you guys decide to say this is a myth or fictitious. No, I gave you real animals and I described them alongside this unicorn. Come on, this gets good. If these animals were like fictitious, the whole idea of this part of Job would have been in vain. It would have no purpose to even write it, because he uses this as these strong beasts. If you look at these rhinoceroses, they're pretty big. They're pretty strong. Now there is another theory. There's another type of horse called an oil horse, and it has like these bumps or these little nubs on its head. And in theory, that could be what they're referring to, but I think it's referring to the rhino. There's also some 18th century rock carvings that suggest there's other possibilities like flying horses, but you know, who knows. Even while Marco Polo was visiting Sumatra, you know what he said? They have wild elephants and plenty of unicorns. But people do the same thing with lots of things in the Bible. They want you to say, dragons are fake, dinosaurs are real, which they are. Or they want you to believe that unicorns are fake. So what they do is they change the narrative. It's not saying that these are flying horses. We're saying that unicorns are a real thing. They're defined by the Bible, but just because it's not in a dictionary that we use today doesn't mean it used to be. In the 1940s, the word dragon was gotten rid of and they changed it for the word dinosaur. It used to say dragon, terrible lizard. Now rare. The study's fun. You got to look at this different. You can't trust what people say. You have to listen to the Bible. It's all there, baby. Hope you guys enjoyed this. See you next time.